Happy holiday, happy holiday. May the calendar keep bringing happy holidays to you.
Hey everyone, this is Josh Hayward and welcome to day 2 of the 12 days of CRAFTmas. It is Wednesday, December the 13th, and we got a special one for you tonight looking at 2 particular beers, and I'm really looking forward to these tonight. I'm only on day 2 of CRAFTmas and I already like it better than the 31 days of pumpkin. I guess one of my favorite things about this thus far has been just the variety. I know we've been through one day, but now day 2 we've got 2 very different beers tonight. So really looking forward to these tonight. I've got quite a few brews, so probably going to be doing 2 a night from here on out, or some type of sequence thereof. I'm not complaining by any means. Lots of great beers here. So first off, we're going to take a look at the Winter Storm Imperial ESB. And for those of you guys who don't know what an ESB is, it stands for Extra Special Bitter or Extra Strong Bitter. Or, and this is incorrect, I've even seen people refer to it as an English special bitter, but that is incorrect. So extra special bitter or extra strong bitter. It is an ale. It falls in the ale family. We don't see them too often over here in America anymore. Occasionally you'll come across one. I'm that guy whenever I go into a tap room or into a brewery and I see they have an ESB, I usually reach for it because if it's done well, it can be a really, really, really good beer. Another interesting note about the ESB, even though it stands for extra special bitter or extra strong bitter, they're really not that bitter at all. If you took all the beers and kind of put them on a scale, this guy is not very bitter, maybe towards the halfway mark, if that. Your IPAs of that type are going to be way more bitter than this, but it is in the name. I like to think of it, or one of the great things about the beer is the balance of it. And that's how you know if an ESB is done correctly. The malts balance very well with the hops. It's just a crescendo of flavor. Nothing is too pronounced one way or another, just a very, very balanced beer. And a few that I've had in some craft breweries here in America have been excellent. Like I said, if a brewery does it and does it right, you can run into a really, really, really good beer. So I said really, really a bunch of times. But this is the Winter Storm Imperial ESB. This is from Clipper City Brewing Company, or Heavy Seas, out of Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, actually. I believe I had one of their beers during 31 Days of Pumpkin and ran across this one and said, gotta grab it. How often do you see an ESB, especially for a wintertime brew? So we're gonna see what we've got. All right, very pretty beer there. Very beautiful beer. I can already smell it actually. Kind of a copperish type color. Little, let's say light amber in a way. There's a little bit of a haziness in there, not much. It's definitely not clear, as our later beer will probably be, being a lager. But just a very pretty beer here. I would say definitely the copper type color, golden to amber for sure. Not a ton of head on this beer. Give it a little swirl, and already as I give it a little swirl, I'm getting some of those aromas. Kind of I call it a pretzel head. Whenever you break apart a pretzel, the white bready looking the inside, that's kind of what this looks like. It's not straight white. It's a little bit of a it's not quite a tan. It's kind of in the middle. It's very, very interesting, and it's not even quite a cream either. It's a different type of color there, but a pretty beer here. Let's see what we've got on the nose. Oh wow. Lots of great aromas in this for sure. Kind of what I was expecting for the ESB. One of the things that is kind of interesting about the ESB is occasionally you'll get some fruit notes in there, and that can come from some of the yeast that's used. Can also come from some of the hops. Just kind of depends on what they're using. But I'm getting a pleasant malty sweetness in this. I would say kind of a toasted bread and caramel type note. I'm also getting some fruity type notes in there too. I would liken it almost to a raisin type aroma. But very, very nice and fruity and fresh, bready as well. Not too much not too yeasty forward. Yeasty forward, that's great. Not too much yeast coming through in that. And not too much hops. Maybe a little bit of a floral type variety as far as the hops go. But this is a very great smelling beer and kind of a pleasant aroma for a winter day. So let's see what we've got. Cheers. Oh, wow. With the aromas that I was picking up there, I was expecting something completely different. That's not a good beer. It's very harsh, a very harsh flavor hits your palate right off the bat. It's not a smooth malty flavor. It's not, you're not getting those fruit notes. It's almost like it's a very harsh flavor at the front end. A pronounced bitterness, more so than a standard ESB would be in my experience. And I would even say the bitterness it's getting up there as far as towards a pale ale or an IPA would go. And harsher though, not a pleasant bitterness. It kind of just hits you right in the palate, and you can't really discern any other flavors. It's a harsh. It reminds me of almost something that might be over-carbonated. That's not what this is. It reminds me of that. If you ever tasted a Coke or tasted a beer that's overly carbonated and you get that carbonated type flavor that just kind of washes everything else out, or like a soda fountain, it's all the carbonation instead of the syrup. That's kind of what I'm getting here. Just it's so strong. I'm not able to discern too much, and even as I continue to talk, the bitterness is lingering there. On the nose, just really set me up. I was really expecting some nice maltiness there, some nice fruity type tastes, possibly from some of those malts and maybe from some of the yeast, and then a subtle bitterness. Again, the ESB, extra special bitter, extra strong bitter, is about balance. ESB, extra special balance, as I like to call. Not much balance in this beer, not a fan of it. Sorry to Clipper City Heavy Seas, I'm not a fan of that one. All right, let me see the best way to do this. It's kind of tough doing it on the tray, but we're gonna make it work. We had an ale here. Now we have a lager beer, actually. And this is Yule Bock from the Olde Mecklenburg Brewery out of Charlotte, North Carolina. One of my favorite breweries locally. Olde Meck is the oldest craft brewery in Charlotte, and strictly devoted to German beer and Reinheitsgebot, which is the German purity law, which says that beer will only be made with malt, hops, yeast, and water. So this is Yule Bock, a seasonal release that they put out once a year. Usually comes out around the 1st of December, and they'll run it right up through Christmas time. This is their Christmas beer, and we're definitely in for a treat. I have had this beer recently. However, I'm going to try and be as unbiased and as descriptive as possible on this particular beer. Interesting note about the Bock beer, it is a dark lager, bottom fermenting lager beer, and it's also stronger. They're usually lagered a little bit longer. Usually have some more malt forward type flavors, and there's also, it's depending on the brewer, depending on what they're aiming for, they'll do different things with the yeast and whatnot to make some really nice flavors and nice complementing flavors with that malt forwardness. Just depends on what they want to do. So Yule Bock, a great Christmas beer for sure. Look at this, guys. This is beautiful. That is a beautiful beer. Copper color, not too dark, not as dark as you might think being a Bock beer, but the great thing about the Bock type, or the Bock subset of beers, the genre I should say, is it can range in color. You can go from really, really light, like a golden Helles Bock, all the way on to like some darker, like double Bocks and things like that are actually near black. But this is a beautiful copper color here, a little more golden towards the edges and a deeper copper and brown towards the center. Very, very clear. Again, I'm missing my kitchen light that shines over these beers, or used to shine over these beers, but very, very clear and crisp, characteristic of the lager, cold fermenting, and then lagering and storing for a while, letting these amazing flavors develop. But yeah, kind of a similar color head. I would say this one's a little bit more creamier than the ESB we just looked at. This is a slightly off-white head, slightly creamy too once you give it a little bit of a swirl in the glass there. So let's see what we've got on the nose. All right, I'm getting some great toasted bread type aromas here. Also getting some German yeast notes in there. Again, just from drinking German beers and trying different kinds of beers, I smell that yeasty type tone. Hey, it's German yeast. Different from Belgian yeast, as we saw, or as we have run into some of these wit beers. I'm also getting a dark fruit type aroma in here, and combined with the breadiness, it's almost reminds me of raisin bread or raisin toast, if you've ever had that for breakfast. I want to say it smells fresh or smells crisp. I can say it smells fresh. It's from some of the hops, possibly of the German noble type variety. But it almost smells crisp in a way. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but from looking at it and then the smell, the aromas are not muddied. They're pronounced. You can smell the bread. You can smell the dark fruit. You can smell the floral, possibly even some spicy hops in there. Just kind of these aromas are just very succinct, very crisp and clear. So really looking forward to this one. As I said, I've had it recently, and it's a great beer. Absolutely love this beer. Picked up a few when I was in Charlotte, and yeah, great seasonal beer from Olde Meck. So cheers to CRAFTmas. That's a good one. It's excellent. Solid German beer. Excellent bready notes, malty notes. Not too malt forward, but the maltiness is pronounced. I compare this somewhat to Olde Meck's flagship beer, which is Copper, and that's an alt beer, kind of a different type of an old ale, so to speak. Different kind of fermentation goes on with that, but this is more malty than that. Kind of similar in how they're fermented and whatnot, even though that other one's an ale, but still just a little bit more malty than that kind of being their base beer. It's a pleasant maltiness, notes of toasted bread, notes of caramel, some of that subtle dark fruit in there. As I mentioned, kind of the raisin toast reminded me of that. Yeah, pretzely, just a great baked toasted bread type malt flavor there. A very pleasant bitterness here. Nothing too over the top. Goes really, really well with the maltiness. The kind of the sweetness from the malt marries very well with the bitterness of the hops that were used here. Again, possibly of the German noble variety. Think herbal, think spicy type hops there. But it goes really, really well together. Surprisingly, forgot this one is 7% ABV, but it doesn't drink like it. It's easy drinking, has a nice mouthfeel. Oh, just so bready. Makes me think of liquid bread. It's so good. Very, very tasty beer here. Great one for sure. Definitely a good alternative to this one. I wasn't a fan of this one, so I'm glad that I found one I really liked with one that I did not so much. But two very interesting beers here. Have the ESB from Clipper City, and then the Yule Bock from Olde Meck. Almost very similar in color there. Look at that. This one's a shade darker. But two very interesting beers. The Bock would definitely be my favorite for sure. But day 2 of CRAFTmas is in the books. We're 3 beers in. We've got lots of great more beers to go. I've got some IPAs coming up, some stouts and some porters coming up, some winter ales, spiced winter ales. So it's going to be a blast. Thank you so much for following along. This has been a ton of fun. Merry Christmas. I'm messing up my closing. Merry Christmas and Merry CRAFTmas. You guys have a great night. Take care. Cheers.